Welcome to In Vivo Leadership Strategies podcast, Integrity Over Scale. My name is Lely, and I have my interim host here, Max. Thank you for joining. Appreciate it.
Yeah. What's going on? How are you?
I'm doing great. I'm actually really excited about this topic because uh, from a consulting standpoint, that's all I've seen is how much time we think we really have versus how we actually have less time than we think we do to make an impact. So I'm really excited to talk through it with you
Yes.
today.
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
me as well. And as an entrepreneur and a business owner and somebody, running teams and systems and all that, I can definitely relate to this. So, yeah, let's get into that. Set the scenario for everybody and let's
Yeah.
talk through it.
So what we're going to talk about today is the first 90 hours as a transformation sponsor and what no one tells you. And funny enough, most executives, they think they have somewhat like 90 days to really settle into the transformational role. But there's actually a really great Harvard Business School article that is saying the real window isn't 90 days. It's actually the first 90 hours.
Ooh.
That is
So what does that
interesting.
equate to? Like a week and a half,
I mean,
pretty much?
yes, pretty much it would be the end of your first week that your company
Yeah.
has to already have decided whether sponsorship is going to be this way or that way. There has to be already an execution in place for the first 90 hours. Yeah.
Man, gotcha. Okay. So that's like,
Yeah.
all right, you've just been named the executive sponsor of a big
Yeah.
and there's this, the new rollout, the CRM merger or whatever, and you got the title, the budget, the slide deck, feeling powerful, but then you're immediately drowning in status reports. You don't have any idea if people are actually changing their behavior, things like that. So what what is the in vivo perspective on this issue and how to turn that around?
Most people treat the first 90 hours as a project management challenge. So it's more like, okay, let's create the blueprints. Okay, let's talk about this. Let's brainstorm about this. Whereas we need to treat it from an in vivo perspective, more of a behavioral integrity challenge. So that means we put the blueprint into execution right away.
Yep, yep.
Yeah. Yeah. So
Now
a
is
lot
that
of, yeah.
like, oh, I was just gonna say, is that common behavior that you see for companies that are going into new rollouts or mergers and things like that where, um, the overwhelm sets in because they've miscalculated the amount of time that they have to structure everything for the appropriate change. Is that like a big pain point?
100%. I just think that you spend a lot of time, which I want to say blueprint is pretty important. You have to have the right formulation for the strategies to work. The idea is that usually when a change comes through, technologically speaking, or any other shifts, people have already been talking about it. So when you're in those rooms and those closed doors and you're putting together this plan, you should already be doing the execution. Whereas you talk to people that are involved, you talk to the sponsor, you start to think about the messaging a little bit
Mhm.
closer. I've had people, my theory is you don't need change management if the leadership is doing great. And most leaders,
Yeah.
unfortunately, don't do a good job. So when they think about bringing change managers in, we're already 3 months into the change. We're already 3 months into the plan. Whereas, like the first day,
Yep.
day one, they should have brought those individuals in there. But again, as leaders, if you do this correctly, there shouldn't be any need for any change management to walk through the door with you.
Got it. So walk us through it. Like in that scenario, what's the first thing here, I'll tell you this. Let me give you two different scenarios. The first one
Mhm,
is the leaders doing a good job and they got on the ball within that 90-hour window. You
mhm.
step in. What's the steps there and how would that look? as opposed to they missed the 90-hour window and like about midway through week 3, they're like, "Oh my god, now I need help." What does that look like?
Yeah. So most of the time, what you'll see, and I'll share what you should do in the first 90 hours is in the first week, a lot of leaders, like we talked about, you're sitting through the decks, you're looking at clean versions. That's more of the boardroom version of what this change is going to be. But then the real
Mhm.
resistance is happening in the hallway conversations, the skepticism, maybe past changes that the company has made hasn't gone really well. So there's some quietness in this, but there's so much happening around it. So in the first 90 hours, what needs to happen in those first few days, people are not evaluating your strategy, they're evaluating your behaviors. When you show up, who you talk to, what
Right.
questions you ask, because those are going to signal the individuals, the stakeholders, we like to call it, right? Whoever's impacted, to tell them whether this transformation is
Mhm.
real. So you need to address the elephant in the room as you're working through how to adjust and shift it correctly.
Got it. So it's essentially like, you don't wait for the new thing you're testing to break and then call in an expert. You get the new thing and call in an expert to make sure that it's implemented and there's preventative actions, that smooth things over so you don't have any of those problems.
Right. And it's all because the executives are launching the change. And with that, they are also deciding whether this is going to actually happen, whether it's not happening. But most sponsors, this is the other mistake that I see, besides not even addressing the elephant in the room. Most sponsors think their job is messaging. And I talked about change managers. They don't see change managers correctly. So the first thing they do is, hey, write me a message, write me an email to send to everybody. The real job is the protection. So managers don't need another talking point, don't need another message. They need to know the sponsor stands behind them when resistance is going to show up or when people say no to it, or even themselves, they may have resistance or they may be upset about past changes and they refuse to be part of this change. So overall, the sponsor has to, from a context situation, know what they're dealing with and also address it in a way that's
Mhm.
going to be more helpful for them.
Yep. Yep. That makes perfect sense. So if that's the case, then what is the messy middle, right? It's kind of like
Mhm.
the manager, the executives launch the change,
Mhm.
but the people running the nuts and bolts and moving the cogs in the machine, they decide whether it actually happens, right? So most
Yeah,
sponsors think that their job is messaging, but the real job is actually protection. So what are some of the pain points that come up with, the people underneath the leadership that are actually the ones that need to do the actions to make the change happen?
exactly. I love that you tied it into what I was just mentioning in there because here's a reality. So McKinsey did a research and they found that 70% of organizational transformations they fail to achieve the intended outcome they wanted to. In other words, whatever tech firm you pay, they're getting paid the big
70%?
bucks. 70%. Yeah.
Dang.
And exactly
Wow.
what you just pinpointed and what I was kind of in a subtle way saying, one of the biggest mistakes is that lack of middle management alignment. Most transformations don't
Yep.
fail at the strategy level. And we are so good at creating strategy, to be quite honest
Mhm.
with you. It's the messy middle that you said, where the
Yeah.
managers, they're left to translate a vision. And then leadership has already moved on and they're just stuck there trying to figure out what to do and how to do it correctly. So, knowing and
For
acknowledging that
sure.
is
Yeah,
really the
well, and
first
also
step.
just yeah. Yeah, for sure. I was just gonna say that, a middle management is inherently challenging regardless, right?
Mhm.
Those are usually the people that take the brunt of things from the top and from the bottom, and they've gotta mitigate all of that, and they still have to perform. So, psychologically, anytime big change happens, there's
Mhm.
discomfort. You could be happy, you could be like, "I'm really excited for this," but it's good, it's different, it's gonna be hard, right? And if you already have a culture in your
Mhm.
business where the leadership is not as communicative, maybe there's some passive aggressiveness, resentment floating around the office, then that change, like, if you don't make sure that your middle manage, like, the people that do the brunt of the work for you and execute for you, if they're not happy, excited, on board, feeling supported, feeling like they have the tools that they need, yeah, like, I don't think any meaningful change is gonna flourish, right? I mean, that's just a recipe for disaster.
I totally agree with that. And that actually takes us back to what I was saying, the messaging piece for sponsors, not to just focus so much on let's send the next email. Think about you having connection and relationships with your people. And even going a little bit
Mhm.
more in depth with that, your people need air cover. So look for people who would look like they are burnt out, or my favorites that I always look for are the quiet resistors. These
Yeah,
are
so expand on that. Who's a
yeah,
quiet resistor?
these are individuals who are high performers, but they're so quiet and they're checking out because they don't see the integrity in the change. They don't see the integrity in leadership. And I always tell whoever in consulting, look for those individuals because they have the most to say to you when it comes to this change. And it's the most dangerous resistant because it's not loud. It's not like someone sitting in the room and being the loudest person in the room where you go, okay, yeah, I hear you. No, no, no. They are quiet and they keep quiet. And one of the other dangers is you can lose them along the way. It's yeah, it's the moment where your most thoughtful employee just stops raising their hand. That should be a big concern for you.
That is so incredibly insightful and something that I can tell you as somebody who has worked multiple different, middle and higher level corporate positions and somebody who runs my own business now. If you have somebody good on your team and they speak up and even one time you publicly disrespect them, you
Yeah,
say something sharp, you don't think about what you're saying, you might have just like, you know, significantly decreased your revenue because that employee, if they stop communicating or they get resentful and they're not the type of person that's just going to come out and say, "Hey, I didn't appreciate." I mean, leaders leading out of fear, things like that, like, that's super dangerous because there are a lot of really quality people that have a bad experience and they just don't feel comfortable approaching their boss and saying, "Hey, something that you said really bothered me and I really don't appreciate it," because they think they're scared, right? So I just
yeah,
wanted to put that in there to all the leaders out there. Please, like, don't buy into this BS that kindness is letting people walk all over you, letting people get away with things, and don't, try to rule with an iron fist and, interrupt people and make it like it's just not good business practice, I mean, be a, considerate, kind person, period. I don't know. I think the world business needs more kindness in it internally. If you want to go after every other business and crush the competition, go do it. But the people on your team, be kind
mhm,
to them, regardless if things aren't going well, okay. Broach the topic, figure it out. How do you work with this person to work better? What's their personality type? All this kind of stuff is so important, right? So I think a lot more
yeah.
people should be talking to you lately. That's what I think, but I might be a little biased. I'm not sure.
I appreciate it, Max. And I think this would be a really good topic that we can discuss too, which is leading from the heart. We have a bad reputation when it comes to kindness in the corporate world because we think it doesn't work for us rather than not. And we can talk a little bit more about that. Maybe that would be a good one that we could do for the next podcast. But overall, kindness is just I mean, we don't have to call it that if we're so scared of it. It's leading with empathy. It's leading with
Yes.
understanding your people.
Yeah. Yep. For sure. And actually, there's I guess from an evolutionary standpoint, I
Yeah.
understand the methodology of, you know, my best performers are going to be the ones that get the most support from me because they're the ones that are going to survive and they're going to bring in the most revenue and all of this. I understand that, right? However, I think that there should be an equal amount of support for the people that are not doing as well, figuring out why. Because, there's so many examples of like companies that worked like Microsoft type companies, right? Where so and so brought an idea and they got laughed out of the office and then they got let go and then they went and started their own thing and it was like, it became a giant like open AI. You know what I mean? Like there's people that go start these brilliantly successful companies and before they were working under or with somebody else and for some reason something happened, it didn't work out and then they go and leave when, if that leader would have intentionally been able to speak with this person, maybe they could have salvaged that business relationship and doesn't
For sure, one
necessarily
of my
mean that they
favorite ones
suck,
because we don't think about
right?
it. It could be because this person is not the right person for this position. They may be better fit for another position in the company. I actually worked with a person where they were having the most difficult time leading one person in their team, and
Mm,
they give it a good year. And finally, they just said, this is just not the right role for them and explored that. And the first initial thought was this person got really upset. He spiraled a little bit. And then within a day or two, he felt relieved because he realized he was so weak at these parts of the position. Now being in this new job, didn't have to deal with that anymore. So there are just so many different opportunities for us to show off for our people. And instead of one, two, three solutions, you can be creative and think of different solutions. Like this person, they thought this individual is better for this role and switch them in there. So we have
yep.
many ways to help our people come along and come to the change that we are creating and help us with it.
Yeah, 100%. I think that's great. And that rolls, I mean, talking about vulnerability, the vulnerability pivot leading from the heart, all of that. I want to kind of like get back to, the 90
Mhm.
hours. So the 30-hour mark, visibility. Usually this is kind of like the time when the first major setback happens, right? So you have to establish
Mhm.
visibility and intent. This is where people might be asking those silent questions or thinking to themselves, like, is this transformation even real?
Yeah,
All
you
of that
said it. You
stuff.
have to.
So
I have to be
to make sure
sensible.
things don't
I ask
spiral.
operational questions. I meet with the managers, different layers of management earlier on to understand. Hey, for instance, we're bringing AI into this department. What does that mean for you? What are some ways that we can automate it? What tends to happen instead is executive leaders just meet with each other. And then let's say there's a project lead that's going to be taking on this
Yep.
change. They just bring that person on board
Yep.
and say, okay, here's what we're going to do. Here's how we're going to do it. Project lead maybe says one, two, three things. And then it's whatever. We don't care. Let's just go ahead and roll this out. So involving people in the first 30 hours and bringing that visibility and those conversations out would be great.
Yep. Yeah, 100%. I love that. So then what about the 31 to 60-hour mark, the diagnosis period where, you identify where the transformation is gonna struggle because you had those conversations, and then, by this point, of course, anybody in the company, they're gonna start forming opinions about the change. Managers, quiet resistors, all of that stuff. So what during this period, uh, what is best
So if we spend
practice
the first
if
30
things
hours
have
bringing
started to
visibility, we're
kind of
asking good
boil
questions
over
and we're
or there's some
talking to
tension?
people,
How do you
then the
kinda
31 to
mitigate
60
that
hours is
and
going
and
to be
get
about
things back on track?
diagnosing. So fun, funny enough, this is where we struggle the most, right? Because we were just saying, okay, like we talked to you, it's fine. No, no, no. Start to think about the problem, start to diagnose it. And this is maybe where the in vitro part
Mm.
comes through, where you start to identify your quiet resistors. You run manager pulse conversations.
Yeah.
You look for in
Yeah.
vitro data to help you with the rest of the change. So
Yep.
by the 60th hour, the resist isn't visible in your report just yet, but it's already forming into conversations. And I think that's the trick is while you're doing the in vitro, the in vivo is coming along with you because you're having those conversations. So one of the pieces that I mentioned was more of the, quiet resistors. So some questions that you can bring to them is, hey, what part of this transformation feels really unrealistic to you? Or where do you feel exposed if you enforce the change? Or what legacy behaviors are still being rewarded that you think we need to change? Ask these questions, and you will be shocked at how quickly they answer it and how long it takes them to answer questions that they have seen, with you out of the room and what they've seen with the other coworkers and colleagues.
Yep. Absolutely. Absolutely. Wow. Yeah, that's really, really valuable information. And then, of course, the 61 to 90 hour mark, which is kind of the protection stage where you're empowering people to translate the strategy into behavior, which I think we talked about in a different episode, like mistaking the menu for the meal. So people think, just like you said, I got a strategy, sure, it's really good, but how do you execute it, and how do you get a whole team of people to execute it? So what's the priority, what is can be tolerated, what's the reward by 90 out by the 90-hour mark. Everybody is watching the behavior of the leader, the
For
people
sure.
working under the
So
middle
if we
managers.
said
Is
we
it all
want
trickling
visibility by the
down?
30th hour,
How
and
does
then we
this
said we want to
kind of factor
diagnose by
in?
the
What's this
60th
this
hour,
section
by
of
the
time
90th
look like in
hour,
the
we need
90
to
hour
provide
process?
protection. We need to empower people. So we talked about our managers who are in the middle. They will need that support. They need that love. And so we have to empower them as sponsors. Yes. And we translate that strategy into behavior. So one of the examples that I can share with you is if
A
you as a
lot.
sponsor, you're
Yes.
sitting with, let's say, a director,
Yep.
and you're saying, okay, here's the change, here's what we need. And then you say, go, you miss the point. And that whoever that your director is going to go and do the best they can. I'm going to say quote unquote the best they can because you gave them zero directions, you gave them zero vision,
Mm,
and you didn't even spend time under telling them what the outcome of this is and why we're even doing this. Simon Sinek is so awesome
yep.
when he talks about say the why. We have to share the why. So that's a conversation where you offer protection and say, how can I support you? What do you need from me? Do you feel burnt out? What are
Yeah.
some
Oh, I
ways that I
love
can show
Simon
up for
Sinek.
you?
Yep.
You're publicly backing managers
Yep.
too. So you're removing conflicting priorities. You're also reinforcing integrity. So what like we just talked about,
Yep.
what's the priority? How do we tolerate it? Do we want to put reward system for people who are coming along
Yep.
the change? So by the 90th hour,
Yep.
you are very aware that people are watching your behavior. So you are doing the best that you can to make
Yeah.
sure that you're speaking one language with them, you're understanding them, you understand the resistance to a certain degree because of the 60th hour. You're just offering this protection. You're like the insurance. You're the health insurance of this change. You're offering to be that layer. Yeah.
Yep. Health insurance. I love it. Yep. Yeah, no, that's so important, and I'm gonna tell you a line that a corporate boss told me that immediately made me
Mhm.
much more confident, much less anxiety, much easier to make decisions. Is he said, "I know you're gonna make mistakes. I don't care if you make
And that's
mistakes.
such
That's
an
gonna
integrity
happen. I'm
move.
gonna be here to pick you up off the ground when you do. The biggest thing is if you're going to bring me a mistake, bring me a solution with it." Right. So that boss was right. He's giving me permission. Hey, if you make a decision and you screw it up, it's okay. That's going to happen. I'm going to help pick you up. But before, you come
Yeah.
and red alert, gr figure out a good solution and bring that to me. I mean, that basically I was like, "Oh, yeah, well, of course I can do that." You know what I mean? Like,
Mhm.
that just made things so much easier for me, and then I felt like it built honesty too, because
Yeah.
then I know I can be honest with him. "Hey, I don't know what to do here. What do I do?" I'm not scared that guy's gonna say, "You know what? Why are you even in this position? You're a piece of crap. You're fired." You know what I mean? Like, So I just wanted to share that because that had nobody had ever told me that before, especially when I was a kid. I was working in retail, like, 90, 100-hour
They
weeks,
do, they do,
managing
and you could have
stores, and
easily
it was
just
just
doubled down
brutal, and it
on
was just
scale and told
never
you, "Hey,
enough.
you
And
need to do your job this way.
man,
This is what I'm expecting from a
just
performance level."
things
Just
got to
kept it very
change.
task oriented, but instead your, boss leaned into the integrity, the truth is, "Hey, if you mess up, it's understandable. Come to me, talk to me." And what I also love about that example is usually leaders who
Hmm.
are able to lean into that more, they have admitted to mistakes and they know they are capable of mistakes. And that's something no one tells you when you're a sponsor is if you admit to a mistake or a gap in the plan, and especially with like the first 60 hours of it, you're
Of
speeding up
course.
adoption for the final 30 days because you're
Right.
building this trust. Yeah. Yeah. And it,
Exactly. Yes. Yep. Well, and interestingly enough,
mhm.
that's kinda how recovery works, with the vulnerability aspect and building trust. But, the recovery lifestyle, which I live, is all about honesty. A lot of corporate America does not have honesty. It has, passing the buck. It wasn't my fault. Sally sent me this email and Tommy didn't do that, and that's why this happened. So the first time I walked into a boss's office and I was like, "Hey, uh, so and so happened. This is my fault. I wasn't, paying enough attention to this. I apologize. What can I do to make it up to you? And do you need to tell me anything else about the impacts and how it made you feel?" My boss looked at me like I was nuts. He's like, "Nobody has ever walked into my office and said something like that." So, doing doing this would speed up and increase
Yeah, I
productivity
agree.
so
And
much,
that's the whole
but
point of this podcast, right? Because
egos get in the
transformation
way. The
doesn't
ego, and
out
it
in the
just
first 90
destroys
days.
things,
It's
which is
like
just
the
really
first
unfortunate.
90 hours, giving all the credit to Harvard Business School. It's the first 90 hours because you're already behaviorally speaking modeling all of that. So the sooner you can start to model correctly, I hate to say the word correctly, but there's a right way to do it, the better off you will be for the rest of the change.
Yep, totally. I completely agree with you. Well,
Mhm.
let's give them the Monday morning 3-point checklist then, because we always like to front load value and give a practical takeaway. So, all the leaders out there, I mean, first of all, if you're going through a new rollout, you've got new tech, new tools, AI, new CRMs, whatever, check out invivoleadershipstrategies.com. Lely is one of the best. She can definitely help you out, and, subscribe to the podcast. But hey, let's do this 3-point
Mm.
checklist.
Outside
Expand a
of the
little bit
executive
on
bubble,
that.
talk to your managers, talk to the frontline employees. Do you want to shock anybody? Is go talk to frontline employees. Their face will just go like, "Oh my God, he's talking to me. She's talking to me." But ask what worries them. Yeah, ask what worries them about the change and then just observe how work actually is getting done. One of the most
Yeah,
amazing experiences I
right.
had as a consultant is I was helping this aesthetic company, and they were changing the operations platform and how they're recording the supplies and the products that are coming in. And I said, I want to look at your front line. I want to look at your employees that are answering the phones and bringing patients in. And I remember the CEO kind of looked at me and said, "Why do you need to do that?" And I said,
Mhm.
"What do you mean? That's going to help me so much because I'll know what the process is and they know it more than you and I do in this room." And so if people only see you in the boardroom, if people only think you're the one who just makes a decision and runs away, that's all they'll expect of you. It's that
Exactly.
theoretical person that walks in and thinks this is the best thing to do. And then I go on a daily basis and I go, nope, can't use it here, can't use it here, can't do it here, can't. So show up where the work
Yep.
happens. That's the first point.
Yep. That's awesome. That's awesome. I love that. Yeah, you don't want you don't want to feel like the leader of the company is just a
Mhm.
talking head and you're just a dollar sign or a number. That's never a good
This
experience. And then
is
number
that
2,
protection, that health
protect the
insurance that we talked
managers who
about. Your
carry the
middle
change.
managers,
So,
they
what
translate strategy
exactly
into daily
does that mean?
behavior.
How do
They
you
don't need
protect them?
another message from the leadership. They don't need another email from you. They need clarity on what the priorities are and then confidence. that you will back them up when resistance happens. I mean, one of the things that I do with my clients is I'll think about the leadership style that's needed in that context, whatever they're dealing with. So I use different leadership styles to help them navigate the change. And one of the pieces that I do is I never do one leadership style only. I combine leadership styles and teach the teach teach my clients. This is how, for instance, let's say servant leadership is one of the most talked about leadership styles that are out there, but it's not always the
Oh.
right place to any company to practice servant leadership. If you practice servant leadership in a financial firm,
Mhm.
uh, that's going to be pretty darn hard to do. So there's time and place for it. So for instance, if you really, let's say you're in that financial firm and you're really adamant, like, I think this is what we need. We need empathy. So I need to bring servant leadership.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Why don't we combine servant leadership with the transformational leadership and the specific part of transformational leadership for finance? Maybe we do intellectual stimulation, which is part of a leadership approach in the transformational leadership. And then I teach them ways that they can navigate and put these two pieces together. I never believe one leadership style. I believe in working and combining what makes the most sense for you and what is going to
Mhm.
make the greatest impact. So protect your managers, find your leadership style that's going to work for you, and prioritize it well.
Yep. Love that. Amazing, amazing answer. And really, like, you know, this stuff isn't that hard, right? Like, it's not going to take tons of time to shift some of these behaviors for leaders. It just takes a little bit of diligence. And then, of course, the last part, watch for the quiet resistance. So, that's obviously, you know, not the people that are making the noise. It's not the loud opposition. It's your high performers that we talked about that are just quietly disengaging because they don't believe that leadership will follow through. So, um, let's say,
Mhm. Make
in
sure
order
that
to get them to
they are loud
open up.
in the room. That one of the ways that you can do that is I remember I'll put myself in that example. I had a team. There were two individuals who spoke the loudest all the time, would get my attention. I don't know if they wanted a promotion or they just wanted to be buddies with me, which usually happens when you're in a leadership position. People just want all of your attention. But I also noticed there was one individual in my team who didn't talk a lot, who was very quiet. And so I just took it upon myself to look at their work, look at the projects that they're part of, really understand where that silence comes from. Because sometimes that silence is they may not be very good at their job, or it could be that they are very good at their job. They just don't feel like they have a voice in the room. And so with this individual, they were very good at what they were doing. When they came in there, these two individuals really took that spotlight. And so they felt like there was nothing to give. So instead of blaming her and telling her, like, oh, yeah, you need to speak louder, I just spent time with her. I took her out for coffee. We talked and I said, I love hearing from you. Tell me what you think about this, and this. And then she started to open up because she noticed that I had interest in her, I had interest in her career, I had interest in her projects. So the next round, instead of telling her you need to speak more, I just opened her up and asked her question. The next time we met, she did raise her hand once or twice and give her feedback and tell tell it like it is, you know?
Yeah, that's brilliant. I mean, that's like what you do with kids almost, like positive reinforcement, right? Like with my daughter, she can be behaving badly, and I say, "You know what? I remember, like, last week, you did this one thing, and my god, it was so cool. I was so proud of you." Like, instead of being like, "Hey, I don't like how you're behaving now. Fix it." It's, "I really like when you did this one thing." And then she's like, "Oh, okay, I get attention and I get what I need when I,
Mm.
behave a certain way." And it's encouraging that instead of focusing on the negative side. So it's like praise people for how you want them to perform and behave as opposed to how they are in kind of a roundabout way. But that's great. Going out for coffee and, not keeping things so rigid all the time is definitely been a huge ass. Like when I meet people
Mhm,
that work for me the first time, like on meetings, sometimes I'll be like, "What's going on, bro?" Like the first thing we talk about isn't business. It's like,
mhm.
"How is your life?" Is everything good? What can you know, and that some people would tell me, "Hey, don't do that, man. You don't want these people leaning on you." But, personally, I don't mind that. I really don't. But and that's just a personal choice. I know there's, like Machiavellian people would tell me, "No, man, you gotta be cold and rigid and
Mhm.
this and that." And I always say, "Okay, well, if it works for you, that's great." But I want people to think of me as somebody they can really come to with anything. And, I think kindness can still be assertiveness and like
Yeah,
accountability, right? You can say, "Hey, look, you're better than this. I know that. All right. What's going on?" You can say that as opposed to your performance has been terrible lately, like the difference between those two things. So, yeah, there's so much we can unpack here. Unfortunately, we can't do the podcast forever. So, summarize it up, Lely. Give people the
absolutely.
first
To be
steps.
Don't waste so much time on theater and to look like you know what you're doing. Spend more time on helping your people. And if you've ever been a sponsor or you've gotten that role and you want to move more from like the symbolicness of the sponsorship to more of the active leadership, you can actually download our executive point checklist for in vivo leadership strategies at www.invivoleadershipstrategies.com. Next week, I did mention leading with the heart. I think that would be an amazing topic. So let's talk about
Mhm.
that because I think that's such a taboo in the world that we are in the corporate world and even how we're running leadership from a world standpoint. So let's talk about why that matters so much and how do we lead from the heart a little bit better. That's all we have today. Yeah,
Yep. Agreed. Love it. All right. Well, yeah, y'all, if you like what you're hearing, definitely follow, share, subscribe, all that fun stuff. And we will see you next week. Thanks so much, Laylee.